When 4-year-old Ryan Hammons first said, "I want to go home to Hollywood," his parents were still smiling. When he began telling detailed stories about how he danced on Broadway and how a talent agent died in his body 60 years ago, they weren't smiling anymore. And when he precisely described a man whose name he could never have heard, well, that's when the investigation began that would forever change our views on reincarnation. This isn't another childhood fantasy story. This is the case of Ryan Hammons, perhaps the most convincing evidence that the soul survives death. Cindy and Kevin Hammons were an average American family in Oklahoma. Kevin worked as a police officer, Cindy as a deputy county clerk. They took their Baptist faith seriously, and nothing spiritual or mystical interested them. Then Ryan was born, and everything changed. Already at 3 years old, Ryan was obsessively interested in Hollywood. Not like most little boys. This was different. He played making movies for hours, and they often heard from his room, "Action!" followed by imitating the clapper sound. His parents initially thought it was just early movie mania. The nightmares began when he was 4 years old. Ryan would wake up screaming at night, shouting, "My heart exploded! My heart exploded in Hollywood!" He would clutch his chest as if he were really feeling pain. This happened almost every night. Cindy and Kevin took him to a doctor, but the specialist said this was normal childhood night terrors. But Ryan gave increasingly specific details. He talked about living in a big white house with a pool. He told stories about dancing on Broadway, working at an agency where people changed their names. He claimed he had 5 wives and traveled the world on big ships. One evening, when Cindy was tucking her son into bed, Ryan suddenly grabbed his mother's hand. "Mama," he said seriously, "I think I used to be someone else." Cindy didn't know what to make of all this. As a Baptist family, they had never talked about reincarnation. It not only wasn't part of their faith, but wasn't even a familiar concept to them. Ryan could never have heard about this theory. Dr. Jim Tucker, a psychiatry professor at the University of Virginia who has been researching childhood reincarnation cases for decades, said this about Ryan's case: "These cases demand an explanation. We can't just sweep them away or explain them as some sort of normal cultural phenomenon." Ryan knew details that a 4-year-old child could never have learned. He described how he traveled to Paris, how he saw the Eiffel Tower. He talked about going to Chinatown, and when his parents first took him to a Chinese restaurant, Ryan naturally knew how to use chopsticks without being taught. The biggest breakthrough came when Cindy began browsing books about Hollywood with Ryan. One day, when they were looking at an old Hollywood memory book depicting moments from the filming of the 1932 movie Night After Night, Ryan suddenly pointed to a man in the picture. "That was me," he said decisively. "That's who I was. And he," pointing to another man, "is George." Cindy quickly determined that George was indeed George Raft, an almost forgotten film star from the 50s and 40s. But she couldn't identify the man Ryan claimed he had been. At this point, Cindy decided to seek professional help. During her internet research, she found Dr. Jim Tucker's name and wrote him a letter describing her son's unusual memories. She attached the photograph to the letter. "It's time to join those who believe there is life after death. Subscribe so you don't miss other incredible stories." Dr. Tucker had spent decades studying similar cases. He took over Dr. Ian Stevenson's work, who began documenting childhood reincarnation cases in 1961. Tucker's office contains files of more than 2,500 children, cases from around the world. Children usually begin talking about their previous lives around age 2, explained Dr. Tucker. This coincides exactly with when their language development allows them to articulate these memories. Tucker traveled to Oklahoma in April 2010 to meet the Hammons family. A television crew also accompanied him, making a documentary about Ryan's case. The photograph eventually ended up in the hands of a film archivist who researched the original production materials for weeks. He finally managed to identify the stern man. His name was Marty Martyn, a former extra who later became a successful Hollywood talent agent and died in 1964. But who was Marty Martyn really? Tucker's research revealed a fascinating life story. He was born Morris Kalinsky in Philadelphia in 1903. His parents were Ukrainian Jews who had recently immigrated to the United States. He had two sisters, one of whom died in childhood. Morris and his surviving sister moved to New York City to enter show business. Morris managed to tap dance on Broadway. Later, he moved to Los Angeles, where he took the stage name Marty Martyn. In 1932, he got a role in the movie Night After Night, starring George Raft, though Marty's role had no speaking parts. When his acting career didn't bring the expected success, he founded the Marty Martyn Talent Agency. His agency became extremely successful. He befriended actor Gordon Nance, who made cowboy movies under the stage name Wild Bill Elliott. Nance also appeared in Viceroy cigarette commercials. Marty Martyn married 4 times. He became wealthy and lived a luxurious lifestyle with his last wife. He had a huge house with a pool in Beverly Hills at 825 North Roxbury Drive. Tucker now waited to see how much Ryan's memories matched Marty Martyn's real life. Tucker laid out black and white photographs on the kitchen table with pictures of 4 women. Ryan studied the pictures, then pointed to one. "She looks familiar," he said, "but I don't know how I know her." This was Marty Martyn's wife. Shortly after, Tucker and the Hammons family traveled to California to meet Marty's daughter, who was 57 years old at the time. Researchers had tracked her down during the making of a documentary. Tucker sat down with the woman before she met Ryan. The woman was initially reluctant to help, but during Tucker's conversation, she confirmed dozens of Ryan's memories. Ryan said he had danced in New York. Martyn was indeed a Broadway dancer. Ryan claimed he was an agent, and that where he worked, people changed their names. Martyn worked for years at a well-known talent agency in Hollywood, where stage names are often created, after his dancing career ended. Ryan said his old address had the word rock in it. Martyn lived at 825 North Roxbury Drive in Beverly Hills. Ryan claimed he knew a man named Senator Five. Martyn's daughter had a photograph of her father with Senator Ives, Irving Ives from New York, who served in the U.S. Senate from 1947 to 1959. And yes, Marty Martyn had 3 sons. The daughter naturally knew their names. One of the most shocking matches emerged when Ryan described in detail the circumstances of Marty's death. "I don't understand why God let me live to 61, then why I had to become a baby," Ryan said. This was particularly interesting because Marty's death certificate stated he died at 59. But Tucker's deeper research found census data showing that Martyn was actually born in 1903, not 1905, meaning Ryan's claim, not the official death certificate, was correct. The later meeting between the daughter and Ryan didn't go well. Ryan shook hands with her, then hid behind Cindy the entire time. Later, he told his mother that the woman's energy had changed. Cindy explained that people change when they grow up. "I don't want to go back to Hollywood," Ryan said. "I always want to keep this family." According to Dr. Tucker, this often happens when children meet the family of someone they allegedly were. It seems to validate their memories and makes them less intense. Tucker eventually confirmed 55 specific details from Ryan's memories about Marty Martyn's life. These details were not available on the internet and could only be discovered through thorough archival research. Ryan said he had a big house with a pool that stood on a street with the word Rock in its name. Martyn indeed lived on Roxbury Drive. Ryan remembered traveling by ship, visiting Paris, and seeing the Eiffel Tower. Marty's wife's travel diaries confirmed these journeys. Ryan claimed he went to Chinatown, and indeed, Marty's favorite restaurant was in Chinatown. Ryan often demonstrated tap dancing. Marty was a Broadway tap dancer. Ryan told about knowing a cowboy man who had a horse that did tricks and appeared in cigarette commercials. This precisely described Wild Bill Elliot, Marty's friend. Dr. Erlendur Haraldsson, an Icelandic psychologist who also researches reincarnation, conducted follow-up interviews with Cindy by phone when Ryan was 11 years old. Haraldsson discovered remarkable things. Ryan loved music from the 50s, exactly the period when Marty Martyn was at his peak. Ryan sympathized with the Republican Party. Marty didn't like Democratic President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. The most interesting discovery was that Ryan wanted to study Judaism, which caused friction in his Christian family. Marty Martyn was Jewish from Ukrainian Jewish parents. This isn't just a story about a little boy, emphasizes Dr. Tucker. This is a window into the nature of reality that we don't yet fully understand. The scientific community is naturally divided regarding Ryan's case. Some claim the child somehow had access to this information. Others acknowledge that Ryan's knowledge exceeds what he could have acquired through any normal means. One of the most difficult questions was, how could Ryan have known these details? The family wasn't interested in history, didn't watch war movies, didn't read books on the subject. Most of the information wasn't available on the internet. Kevin himself was skeptical. As a police officer, he had a logical, fact-based mindset. I didn't want to believe it, he admitted later, but the evidence was too strong to ignore. According to Dr. Tucker's research, Ryan's case is a typical example of what they call spontaneous past life recall. In these cases, children are usually most detailed between ages 3 and 5, then gradually forget these memories. In Ryan's case, we saw exactly this, explained Dr. Tucker. As he grew, he talked less and less about Marty Martyn and became more immersed in his own current life. This pattern appears in almost every documented reincarnation case, as if the soul slowly adapts to the new body and new life. Ryan's story resonated worldwide. It's particularly interesting that it happened in a culture traditionally skeptical of reincarnation. In Christian America, the soul's rebirth isn't part of mainstream religious beliefs. This makes Ryan's case even more convincing, believes Dr. Haraldsson. He didn't come from an environment where this kind of belief would have been reinforced. In other cultures, such as India or Tibet, reincarnation cases are more common and accepted. But Ryan's case suggests this might be a universal human phenomenon, regardless of cultural background. Dr. Tucker points out that advances in quantum physics might open new perspectives. Max Planck, the father of quantum mechanics, supported theories suggesting consciousness doesn't depend on our brain for existence and might continue when the brain stops, perhaps to another brain, another life. To my mind, there may well be this larger self that has different lifetimes, says Tucker. There's a core that continues, though the people it inhabits are different. In Ryan's case, the emotional attachment was particularly noteworthy. Ryan didn't simply know these things. He spoke about them with emotion. He began crying when he couldn't recall his children's names. He spoke joyfully about dancing and filmmaking. The emotional intensity, the longing for the past, his nightmares, and his Martyn reminiscent play all suggest something deeper and more extensive than acquiring information through some kind of telepathy, notes Dr. Tucker. The family was regularly attacked by those who claimed the parents were manipulating the child or trying to make money from the story. However, Cindy and Kevin never profited from Ryan's memories. In fact, they kept the story secret from the public for years. Ryan's case changed not only him, but the entire family. Kevin, who previously had a materialist worldview, began believing in the spiritual dimension. "This can't be ignored," Kevin said. "If this is true, then everything we thought about the world needs to be reconsidered." For Cindy, motherhood became a challenge. How do you raise a child who remembers a previous life? How do you help him process these traumatic memories? Interestingly, Ryan's dreams and nightmares gradually decreased as his parents began taking his memories more seriously, as if the little boy needed someone to believe and understand him. According to Dr. Tucker, this is a common phenomenon in reincarnation cases. When children feel understood and accepted, they usually become more peaceful, he explained. Ryan gradually returned to normal childhood behavior. On April 30th, 2011, when the Biography Channel aired a documentary about him titled "The Unexplained: A Life in the Movies," Ryan was no longer talking much about Marty Martyn. 6 months after the film, Ryan removed the Martyn-themed decorations from his room, an iron Eiffel Tower, New York pictures, and told his mother it was time to be a normal kid. Ryan's case gave new momentum to reincarnation research. Several universities began studying similar cases, trying to find scientific explanations. Technological advances offer new possibilities. DNA testing, brain imaging, and other modern methods might help understand what happens in these cases. Ryan Hammons' case is a milestone in research, believes Dr. Tucker. This was one of the best documented and most thoroughly investigated cases I've ever seen. If Ryan's story is true, it has profound implications for understanding human existence. It means death isn't the final stop, but a transition to the next life. This could change how we think about life, death, and our purposes. If we have multiple lives, every decision might carry greater weight. Ryan's case isn't unique. According to Dr. Tucker's statistics, the average age when children begin talking about their previous lives is 35 months. The median age of the previous person's death is 28 years. Most children with such memories are between 2 and 6 years old. The memories then fade. The median time between the remembered death and the next birth is 16 months. In India, where reincarnation is part of Hindu and Buddhist traditions, 100 similar cases are documented annually. In Tibet, the reincarnation of the Dalai Lama and other high-ranking monks has been recognized for centuries. But Ryan's case's uniqueness lies in occurring in a cultural environment that doesn't support these beliefs. This strengthens the story's credibility. Tucker's research also shows that traumatic deaths seem to leave emotional imprints in the next life, making it more likely for a child to remember. And this can have psychological effects. For example, those who drowned in a previous life might show irrational fear of water. In Ryan's case, there was no such trauma. Marty Martyn died of leukemia from a cerebral hemorrhage, but emotional intensity manifested in other ways. The story doesn't end here. Subscribe to learn about the latest reincarnation cases and spiritual discoveries that could change your worldview. Ryan's case highlights the gap between modern science and spiritual experiences. Official science generally rejects phenomena it cannot explain. But more and more scientists are beginning to acknowledge that there are areas we don't yet fully understand. Quantum physics, for example, has discovered phenomena that challenge traditional physical laws. We must be open to possibilities we don't yet understand, warns Dr. Haraldson. Ryan's case might be the bridge that connects science and spirituality. Of course, it's important to approach all reincarnation cases critically, including Ryan's story. Science is based on skepticism and rigorous proof. But in Ryan's case, the evidence is so strong and detailed that it's difficult to find alternative explanations. The historical accuracy, personal details, and family dynamics all support the reincarnation theory. "I don't ask anyone to believe blindly," said Cindy Hammons, "but I ask them to examine the evidence with an open mind." Ryan is now a young adult and rarely speaks about his past life memories. But his case continues to inspire researchers and those seeking answers to life's big questions. The story touches generations. Ryan's case is studied at universities, analyzed by psychologists, and discussed in spiritual communities worldwide. According to Tucker, 20 to 30% of Americans believe in reincarnation. This is a worldwide phenomenon of young children saying they remember a past life, says Tucker. We look at individual cases to see if they hold up, and at the phenomenon as a whole, to see what patterns there are and what we think it all means. Ryan's case is special in that every detail pointed to one person, Marty Martyn, whom he showed in the photograph. If you look at a picture of a guy with no lines in a movie, then tell me about his life. I don't think many of us would have come up with Marty Martyn's life, notes Tucker. Yet Ryan provided many details that really did fit with his life. Dr. Tucker's research isn't without critics. When his work was recently featured in the University of Virginia magazine, some readers expressed outrage in the comments. One reader wrote he was appalled that this kind of work was being done at the university. Another called Tucker's research pseudoscience. Tucker says he's only trying to apply the rules of science to the mystery of reincarnation. These cases demand an explanation, he emphasizes. We can't just sweep them away or explain them as some sort of normal cultural phenomenon. A particularly moving aspect of Ryan's story was how he talked about choosing Cindy as his mother. He said he saw me from heaven and knew he recognized me from a previous life, Cindy recounted. He said he chose me as his mother so he could take care of me. This kind of emotional depth and connection goes beyond simple information transfer. It suggests something much deeper is happening in these cases. As Ryan grew up, his memories gradually faded, as if the past slowly let him go. But something remained. A love for old movies and 40s, 50s big band music that still connects him to the era when Marty Martyn lived. Ryan's case isn't just about a peculiar child. It's a window into the nature of reality we don't yet fully understand. And if it's true, then everything we thought about life, death, and the purpose of our existence needs to be reconsidered. The bridge between science and spirituality might be found in stories like Ryan Hammons's, where human experience transcends the boundaries of the physical world and points toward something greater, more mysterious, something that perhaps speaks of the soul's immortality.